Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I say that because we've got a global audience. Thank you for making time to join Luca and I on this webinar organized by Olapic. I'm June Wee, Event Marketing Manager based in New York City, and shortly I'll be handing you over to our speaker for today, Luca Benini, who's based in our London office. The title for today's session is Emerging Trends in UGC and Implications for Brands, with results from the Global Consumer Trust Report. Just before I hand it over to Luca, I'm just going to go through a few webinar housekeeping points. So all in the audience is in listen-only mode. It is being recorded. So at the end of the webinar, we will send out a recording of this webinar. You may feel free to participate by asking questions anytime, and there are two ways that you can actually do that. There is a Q&A feature on the bottom right of your GoToWebinar screen. Alternatively, if you're into Twitter, please tweet at Olapic. If there are any gems of knowledge from Luca that you would like to share, please feel free to use our it's OLASAYS that you can see on the screen right now. And last but not least, before the end of this webinar, we will be holding a live poll with just one simple question. And if you could participate, we will be very grateful. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Luca in London. Over to you, Luca.
Thank you very much, June, and welcome everybody. I think we have more than 1,000 people joining us. It's truly a global audience, and I'm very excited to be here with you. This afternoon in London, this morning in the US, and late night, if you're there, Survivor, in Asia. So my name is Luca Benini. You see my smiling face on this slide. You probably hopefully see me on camera. We've decided to broadcast also really live with me. I'm a real person. I'm really with you in this. I'm quite excited, as I said, to take you through some of the findings of working and our extensive experience in working with many brands across the globe and helping them with their UGC and content and needs and solutions. Before we do that, just a bit more about myself. I'm a senior vice president here at Olapic. I'm responsible for our operations in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I joined a year and a half ago, and I couldn't be happier to be, working in such a, exciting, innovative company, working with some of the best brands. Talking about the brands that we work with, what do we do with them? Brief introduction to what is Olapic. You probably are familiar with Olapic if you're connected right now. You've interacted with us, with our solutions, maybe on some, clients. Client sites, you've seen it. What we do is we have the brands that we work with use and make use of earned content through our earned content platform, which is the central location for visual earned content that powers all marketing channels. Value that we deliver, we can actually discuss it in 4 key areas. One is increase brand assets, a straightforward the content solution. We provide content of a new definition of quality at a new scale. We help our customers engage with their consumers. We help them put their consumers at the core of their marketing strategy execution and at the core of their decision, their messaging, their discovery exercise. We help brands convert more buyers. We work with a lot of e-commerce and direct-to-consumer solution companies, and we help them really harvest the best content that drives conversion. We'll see some results. We have a few case studies. If you want to share with you, get in touch. We can tell you more about the ROI in e-commerce specifically. Ultimately, we drive loyalty. We help brands that work with us engage at a new level with their community, monetize their community, activate their communities, and through that connection, establish long-term relationship that ultimately drive loyalty. As I said, we're very fortunate. We work with more than 400 brands globally. You recognize some of them here. Global groups, very much at the forefront of the innovation in their marketing efforts, in the way they craft and they deliver messages, and they use content in a very clever way in their advertising and marketing channels. I'm not going to name names. You can actually see them all here. We work with companies in many different verticals, from consumer products, passing by travel, beauty. You see some luxury examples here with jewelry and watches, and many more. On the high street, of course, we have a lot of clients there. Without further ado, let's actually tackle today's webinar. Why am I so excited? Well, because I'm gonna spend kind of half an hour now with you. First of all, making a case for user-generated content. We're going to talk about that, and kind of framing the rest of the session today. And then we're going to go deep into the UGC trends, and we're going to look at what are the emerging trends that we see by talking to our customers in the marketplace and surveying consumers. We've highlighted 5 key trends. We're going to actually go one by one through them, so I'm not going to read them out loud here. There for you to read if you want them. And then ultimately we're going to close with a few brand recommendations. We're going to see what that means, what we think that means for brand, what we hear brands say about what are these UGC trends and how they can make the most of it through few recommendations. So let's start actually with the first part of this, making the case and kind of framing the rest of the conversation. Looking back at 2016, we saw consumers increasing the adoption of ad blocking technology. Ad blocking was discussed extensively last year. If you're part of this technology, of this industry, you have been part of the debate about ad blocking, not ad blocking. The reality is that there was an increased adoption. There was, I think a few statistics. There's a statistic from eMarketer that suggests that almost 70 million people in the US activated an ad blocking technology on their browser, and therefore blocking messaging, preventing messaging, in the digital space as they were browsing the web, advertising messaging to reach them. That represents an increase actually of 24% versus previous year. Implications for brands are quite obvious. There's an interesting fact that, just this morning I was discussing with a industry veteran, and he was talking to me about the shift from media conversation to content conversation happening in the CMO office, and the media and trading conversation now happening in the CFO office and being a pure financial conversation, whereas the real interesting and the real innovation conversation that needs to happen in the CMO office is focused on content. Well, you're in the right place if you're in that in that mind frame and mindset, because that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Second thing highlighted here to frame the conversation: consumers rejected heavily photoshopped imagery. We saw that really taking place over the past few years. Last year was the year of kind of straightforward rebellion from consumers, and at the same time we saw quite a few brands taking responsibility for it and actually going out to the market and saying, we are not going to use photoshopped imagery. We're not, airbrushed images are no longer part of our of the way we portray our users, our products. The example that comes to mind is American Eagle, which very successfully actually started a campaign centered around authenticity and obtained quite strong results through that. Last point here: consumers turn to one another for product inspiration. We're gonna talk about it more. What is how is today how is happening product discovery today? How do consumers get to know a new product, a new service, a new brand? How do they get inspiration for what they want to buy, for what they want in general in life? And we will see how that is anchored in the relationship that is now possible with people that are just like me and what they like, and the power and the importance and the relevance of user-generated content in this context. So ultimately, in 2016, consumers demanded authenticity. If they demand authenticity, then it's quite obvious to see how the resulting effect is a rise of user-generated content. Rise of user-generated content, that is, we're going to see it actually means more user-generated content being available, more ways for consumers to participate actively in the life of the brand, in the messaging, in the narrative of the brand, and more brands embracing earned content, user-generated content, making it part of their message communication. At Olapic, we are experts. We are very fortunate to be working with some of the best brands, and we have a few stories to tell. We're going to analyze in a few more today. A lot of what we see today is based on a consumer trust report that we ran last year, thanks to the services of a company called Census Wide. They helped us reach more than 5,400 people across 6 countries that we feel are representative at least of Europe and the US trends and the North American trends. As you see, we reached out to consumers aged 18 to 49 years old across all of these countries. And we came up and we distilled out of those 15 questions a few findings that we're going to share with you, throughout the day today as we talk about these emerging trends. The first key findings that really jump out from this survey are summarized here. The first one being 76%, more than 3/4 of the people that we surveyed, view content posted by other consumers as more honest than advertising. It's probably a self-fulfilling prophecy. We're probably stating the obvious, but it's quite interesting to see that feeling, that authenticity, that honesty actually comes through with user-generated content, by consumers trusting other consumers more than they trust branded advertising. 56% of the people surveyed said that they're more likely to buy a product after seeing it featured in a positive or relatable user-generated image. A couple of key points here. Positive, we'll see that there's a positive association typically that happens when people post an hashtag and call out a brand when they post something on social media. And then relatable, the authenticity element again that makes it effective in the eyes and in the minds and in the wallet of the people that are exposed to user-generated content. 45% of the people that we surveyed look at user-generated images for inspiration once a day or more. So there's a frequency element there, and there's the inspiration, the discovery element there that are key to this key finding. And then lastly, 25% say that they actually have bought a product after seeing it featured in user-generated content. This is key because it's the ultimate proof. It's when people put their money where their mouth is, and not only they are saying that it's more honest, that it's more relatable, that it's positive, that they like it, that they are inspired by it, but they actually act on it and they go and buy it. And this is very interesting and very relevant, obviously, for all the marketers that are logging in today and listening to this webinar. So this actually helps us set the frame for what's to come, which are the emerging trends in UGC and the implications for the brands. So let's actually jump right into the first one, consumer-led marketing. This is kind of the overarching trend that solidifies the reason why we're here today and we're talking to you, today about UGC. We are at a point in time where there is a positive convergence of 3 key elements that are happening at the same time simultaneously. One is consumer preferences. We just explored them. We have a ton of stats saying that people relate to people. People expect their message to be personalized, relatable, positive, and aligned with their thinking, with who they are. And not only that, but they're also out there creating images. They are part of this movement. So their preference is not only on the receiving end of the message, but is also at the forefront by producing the actual content, user-generated content. Mobile technology Well, the point is very straightforward. You have an Instagram machine, a Twitter machine in your pockets where you're sitting right now. And as the vast majority of the consumers of the world have the same, and they're now using it, producing high quality images and sharing at a new scale. And then ultimately brand adoption, we've seen over the years, and definitely in 2016, a huge uptake. The best brands, the best innovator brands, adopting and really embracing the opportunity that comes with user-generated content. Just to kind of add some statistics, some data points. We see a 7 times more, study we saw earlier, respondents trust UGC more than traditional advertising. Again, if you need more convincing, we might actually have a few more stats on it, but I think we've made a very good case for consumer-led marketing being kind of a key trend for 2017. What is the flip of the coin there, though, is that not using imagery that is correct, that is authentic, that actually reflects what's the user experience, how they experience the product, actually means that you're going to pay the price. And consumers are confirming that when we ask them, what happens when they are receiving an item that is not corresponding to their expectations set by the images that they saw when they were purchasing something. 9% of them actually say that they are returning the item. So there's a straightforward, immediate price to pay for brands that actually then has an impact on trust, and then probably has an impact on long-term, the loyalty, the long-term relationship that a consumer wants to have with the brand. Once they buy something and they cannot relate to it, then they're less likely probably to buy it in the future as well. I have another piece of stat here that 13% is actually that number, the same number when you look at just the US market. Quite an interesting stat there for us to reflect on when we flip the coin from the positive to the negative impact possible. Is UGC relevant then in daily life decision? We wanted to analyze a bit more, and through the consumer trust report, then we asked users, how often do you look at user-generated content for inspiration? So granted that they actually say they look for product discovery, for inspiration, they turn to user-generated content. We ask them how often do they do, and we see that the majority tends to do it on a regular basis, more than once a week, but really more than once a day, tops the chart there, with kind of confirming that not only is widespread and is a large phenomenon that we're observing here, but also that by frequency, it's very much front and center of where people turn to when they're looking for product inspiration. We have a couple of top countries there. In Spain, 46% of the people look at UGC more than once per day when looking for product inspiration. 38% is the relevant stat for France. So this, we've analyzed the first trend there, consumer-led marketing. Now, how do marketers engage if not proactively? Where is the real opportunity for brands to engage? Well, now they can invite that proactive consumer engagement, and they can make it. They have the opportunity to making it central to their strategy, their marketing strategy. If you look back a few years ago, when social was just starting, most brands were dealing with social in reference to complaints or to comments that were made about their brand. And the urgency back then was to take care of those complaints, to address those comments, and to learn from them. We've been there. I'm sure if you're on the phone, you've been working in this industry for a few years, you have been there too. Technology to take care of the complaints and the negative was very much the urgency back then. Now, fast forward to today, there is an opportunity to proactively engage because there's a wealth of positive in social media that is now ready for us to harvest. A statistic that we see here on this slide: 86% of the young millennials. So when we restrict the perspective, looking at people aged 18 to 24, and we ask them, what do they do with UGC? Why would they share something? They actually say that they share brand photos to express product appreciation with friends. So this is the posting, the positive element of posting that we see very much present for young millennials. So we talked about posting for a positive reason. We actually went out as part of our survey and asked about the motives of hashtagging a brand or a service when posting something on social media. A couple of stats that are really good. And, if you're using your tweeting machine, then you want to tweet this stat. 74% of the people that we surveyed confirmed that they uploaded a photo hashtagging a brand. So they are calling out a brand when uploading a photo of themselves or of something they're experiencing. So we're talking about 3/4 of the population, at least the visibility that we have through our survey, confirming that this is a widespread activity. Not only that, then when we look into the motives, we say, so why would you do it? Why would you reference a brand when posting something on social media? Interestingly, appreciation for the product ranked first among the motives that push people to post on social media. So again, if you go back to what we were saying earlier, from the negative, I'll complain on Twitter, that's probably still happening, but the new generation, the new approach, the new attitude is to reward and to want to be part of the narrative of the brand by positive association, by posting on social media with the association of the brand to appreciate a product or a survey or a service. 39% respond a contest. Again, we see this as a key activity to activate the community, especially when brands are starting to harvest and to engage positively with their community, to monetize and activate their community. A contest is a very good way of doing it, and consumers are confirming that they actually do that and they respond positively to it. 39% of them posting a brand because there's a content behind it. And then 29% of them, interestingly, ranking third, they would post a photo associating a brand because whatever service or product they're portraying in that picture makes them look good in it. The selfie era confirmed by a few stats here. Trend number 3 for us today is individuals, not segments. We are going to spend a couple of minutes now talking about personalization. If you're in this industry, if you work in marketing, you have had at least a meeting talking about personalization. How do we make, how do we create, how do we make our messaging, our narrative, our way of reaching out more personalized to the target audience, to the individual that is out there? The underlying truth here is that as consumers, we expect, there is an expectation. We're beyond that. We're actually not ready to tolerate when a brand reaches out to us and they don't know who we are. They don't have a sense of where we are in the purchase process. When you receive that product recommendation after you purchase something, that actually breaks the relationship that you have with the brand or with the retailer that is sending you that product recommendation right after you bought something from them, because their retargeting somehow went wrong. This is just one of the examples, I believe, that I think really the trend is about treating people as individuals and treating an audience no longer as an audience but as a sum of individuals with different perspective, different profiles, and different expectations and different places in the purchase funnel. An interesting statistic here from Accenture kind of confirms that 75% of consumers are more likely to buy from a retailer that recognizes them. So there's the interesting balance that marketers are trying to strike now between how much invasive can I be and how much can I use the information that I have about the consumer, and on the other hand, how much a consumer is ready to embrace and recognize this effort from the brand to personalize a message to them, and is responding by sharing more data, by inviting more personalized content and messaging to come to them. I think this is a key element for us to understand. Us as marketers, the consumers are ready and they're willing to engage in a personalized way for you. They are ready and willing to establish a direct connection where there's a mutual understanding and mutual knowledge. What does that actually mean? Well, it means that new content, more content is needed. Why? Because the same message with the same content cannot be sent out en masse to a whole target audience. That content that goes in the message needs to be personalized for the person. So this calls for a new scale of content. You have to have those 50,000 images to send to 50,000 different people. And this is also what this specific trend is about. Can you activate a personalization strategy if you don't have access to quantities, a new scale of content? The point that we're making using this statistic is that the content is out there and is not relevant just to one demographic or just to one country. Interestingly, when we ask about posting and calling out a brand, that 3/4 of the people activity that we saw earlier, we actually see that as an activity that is evenly distributed across geographies and across countries. So what does that mean? It means that there is content available at scale for any age group, for any geography. So what does that mean? It means that now brands can drive relatable content. They can now use content choose from the new volume of content that is available, the right content to drive the right message to the right person. A few numbers here on these slides. 70% of US consumers are actually more likely to buy a product if they saw a positive, relatable customer photography. So that impact, the straightforward impact of using the right content at the right time with the right person, is confirmed by the people that we surveyed. As I said, 70%, and even if it's lower percentage, is still the majority of the European consumers confirming that there is a likelihood to appreciate and to respond positively to the use of a personalized, relatable, positive content in the branded message that reaches them. Trend number 4, distribution and measurement. New scale, new challenges. Now the excuse, we've removed the excuse of not having enough content. So here's a new challenge, or here's a new opportunity to take the wealth of the content available and distribute it through all the channels, using and tapping into all the touch points throughout the buying journey of the consumer, but also using all the marketing channels to reach them. That comes with a new challenge, or again with a new opportunity: measurement. A lot more data points can now be used and can be harvested in association with the use of a new scale of content and a new scale of widespread distribution, harvesting those data points and informing the next use of a branded or a user-generated content, the next use of a channel. How do we privilege using an image or another? We have some expertise at Olapic that we make use of them in our platform, with predictive analytics that suggests and ranks imagery based on the expected performance by analyzing the image itself, the interactions, the previous interactions to the image itself, the interactions that are happening on all channels, using that information, the data points, to inform the next wave of content that goes out is now necessary, because if not, we cannot manage the new scale of content and the new scale of distribution. So that's a key trend that we see. So we no longer need to solve the problem of what content or how to source the content. The new challenge and new opportunities, where do we put content? So as we look at where is content effective, we actually asked consumers, what type of products are you more likely to buy, and for those purchases, are you more likely to relate to which content? So the intersection between what type of content, what type of product, and therefore, relating back to a vertical, and what type of content for what type of product. And the majority of the respondents there are actually saying that there is a perfect intersection between branded website and social for them to go and look for content to inform their purchase decision. This is prominent and predominant in 3 key verticals: beauty, travel, and consumer products. So this is where these are the verticals where we've seen particular engagement and the best combination of the use of content, the best effectiveness of the use of content in the context both of the branded website and obviously social channels. Talking about those social channels and the preferences of users. So we asked people how do they rank and where do they seek user-generated content, when they're looking for inspiration and interaction with user-generated content. Not surprisingly, the statistics here suggest the majority looking at Facebook, which is quite obviously the de facto social media network of the world, but then an interesting 12% looking to Instagram, core, where visual content is core, and kind of a social media network designed around visual content. Twitter, Pinterest, Snapchat, no surprises there. Really, when we look at the global population and all ages. When we turn our focus into a specific age group, the 18-24 that we made a couple of references earlier, we see that actually that picture changes slightly, and there's a majority now, 32% of them, saying that Instagram is their destination as the most popular platform where they will interact with user-generated content, where they go for that inspiration that we saw, we discussed earlier, where they go to find positive, relatable content that drives their purchase decision. Again, if you're on this webinar, if you're listening to me, live from London, you are very and acutely aware of the preferences of your consumers and the effectiveness of tapping into all of these channels to activate your consumers and to find new consumers, and through your existing community finding and extending the reach of your brand. So this shouldn't come as a surprise. It's interesting actually to see how the new buyers, the 18 to 24, the buyers of tomorrow, today are focusing their attention on a specialist, Instagram as a specialist visual platform for their interaction with user-generated content. Our fifth and final trend for today is we are seeing a new consumer journey. What do we mean by that, and how does it actually come to life? Well, there is a centrality, a new centrality, if you want, and again, we've been talking about it for years. It's so obvious and so apparent now that it kind of redesigns and reshapes continuously consumer journey. What I'm talking about is the centrality of mobile and mobile experiences in the consumer journey. Interestingly, we are framing as part of our analysis today mobile as both the destination, as we said, of the new consumer journey, but we're also talking about it as the originator of a lot of the wealth and the value that sits in user-generated content. I had my my iPhone. That's actually probably a picture of my iPhone in that slide. We are, it's an arm's length, to all of us. It's central to our life, but it's not only where we turn as a channel to be advertised to, it's also where we act on what we are advertised to. And I think that's actually making it very, very interesting. What is happening with user-generated content in the context of a consumer journey is that it actually starts to add a few more crucial steps into what it means, for consumers to being on a journey. Their connection with the products and services they have. If you're looking at my slide here, you'll be familiar with the classic representation of a consumer journey that starts with awareness, that discovery element, and you can see quite a few things that are impacting on the awareness. All the marketing activities that you're doing, from direct mail to everything that you're doing offline in digital. There's an offline component that has to do with what's happening in shop, that has an impact on awareness as well. And there's a little image there, an icon representing an image, which is all the content that you're using to drive awareness. Let's talk about evaluation. That the next step, after I discover something, I feel like I want it, I need to evaluate options, and that that is very much part of the consumer journey. You can see how different elements now play a role, but still we see images and content, the necessity, the need of content to make the evaluation happen, and then ultimately taking action, the purchase element of it, where it happens, how it happens, and what is influencing it, and what are the marketing channels that you can activate in order to drive that last part, the last purchase. And we saw earlier when we started, 25% of the people that we surveyed saying that they actually take action upon seeing and being inspired by UGC by purchasing something. So that there's a direct impact there for user-generated content. Interestingly, and the point that I want to make on this slide is about usage and advocacy. So by looking at the brands and the marketers that are adopting user-generated content are adding a couple of steps of sources and vehicles to drive usage and advocacy. How? Because during usage, people are sharing the way they are enjoying a product or a service, and they're sharing it with the world. We saw a few stats about it. And through that, they're driving advocacy. They are creating discovery for other people that are connected to them. So all of this is a virtuous cycle that is ignited through awareness. Starts with the content in the traditional way, but then it's completed by the use of user-generated content, by the activation of user-generated content at the point of usage that becomes advocacy for the brand, for its product or services. Specifically, UGC is impactful in a pre-shopping phase. We asked, when are you most interested in tapping, looking at user-generated content, interacting with user-generated content on your consumer journey? And 65% of the people that we interviewed said that pre-shopping is where they're most likely to be influenced by user-generated content. So 65% in the US and 57% in Europe. So way beyond the majority of the people, confirming the specificity of the impact that we can see in a pre-shopping situation, in a pre-shopping shopping phase throughout their consumer journey. So ultimately, how do they make that shopping experience? We talked about mobile being central. How can they make it more attractive? Well, we've worked with a lot of brands that are asking us to find new ways to activate new thumb-stopping moments in the way that Instagram and Facebook are defining these moments. When people are scrolling through their mobile, how can we capture their attention? How can we use content in a new and clever way to create the thumb-stopping moment, and making, therefore, the pre-shopping we see is key as an influential point, through UGC, how can we make it more attractive? If you follow Olapic, you've seen us creating a new type of video out of images. So the animation, where images come to life, and through a relatively subtle animation, sometimes creating whole new experiences that are confirmed to be more effective. Very effective by our A/B testing, and the marketers that are using it are seeing great results. So we've spent some time talking about how UGC is relevant, it works, is effective. We're now into the okay, so how do you make it even more attractive, and turning these images and the assets at a new scale and activate them in a whole new way by animating them and making them available to marketers to use in a mobile environment especially is key to generating even more effectiveness, specifically in the pre-shopping experience. So vertical videos, Instagram native videos, and all other formats are really driving engagement. They are driving completed views, all the key stats that we know through engagement drive brand adoption and ultimately purchases from consumers. So we've analyzed 5 key trends. We have set the scene, I think, at the very beginning for what UGC is and what it means for consumers and for brands. We're now at the end of our analysis, and we have a few recommendations that somehow actually come from our experience and therefore come from the brands themselves. This is what our clients are telling us it's key to their success in 2017. So what are the recommendations that they can take out of these indicators, out of these trends, to recreate, reinvent, evolve, innovate their marketing strategy and the execution on all the channels? Well, the first recommendation is for them to co-produce brand experiences with consumers. Open your arms if you're a marketer. Invite your community into the brand. Invite the experiences that come from your community into the brand narrative, and use that and leverage that at a whole new level, at a whole new scale. Through that, you'll gain insights from consumers, understanding them more, being closer to them, understanding what they want, what they share, what they celebrate. And then there's the centrality of the community that comes through that. So with that proactive engagement that we also saw as a trend that leads to so much good positive return for brands in their engagement with their audiences. The second recommendation here is amazing. It's like build trust with your audiences. That trust element, that authenticity, the relatability element being central to the success of the innovator in 2017. No longer is acceptable that you send me a generic message. No longer is acceptable that you send me a misleading image, an image that I cannot relate to, that I don't feel is right for me, or is mine, or is of a friend of mine. The loyalty element that comes out of through trust and the lifetime value that you achieve is unprecedented. The opportunity for the marketer today is unprecedented, and that building of the trust is key as a foundation layer for the success of any marketing activity in 2017. And the ultimate recommendation here is to create purchase confidence with UGC. The activation of this earned content across all channels, the use, thanks to the scale and the availability of the content, knowing that it's going to perform, knowing that it's going to go a very long way, driving all the key performance indicators that you expect as a marketer throughout all the touch points, throughout all the channels. And then through that, maintain consistency in all the consumer touch points, being able therefore to deliver a consistent message that is close to the consumer, that is co-created with the consumer, that is impacting them in a personalized way throughout all the channels, and is ultimately therefore being a lot more effective. Now we have come to the end of our webinar. We are ready to turn on question and answers. I think you have had the opportunity to ask a few questions throughout this webinar. Hopefully, things have come to mind. We've stimulated your curiosity. You want to know more about us, about Olapic, about the successes of the brands using user-generated content. June, turning back to you, do we have any more questions or any questions?
Yes, Luca, we actually have a lot of questions. So,
Okay.
respecting everyone's time, we've got 13 minutes, so let's get through as many as we can. And
Yes.
for those of you who can't stay through everything, don't worry, we'll be sending you a recording of this webinar, as well as an FAQ sheet with questions and all the answers. So now, let's see. First question here. Okay, Luca, if we're not currently integrating our customers into our marketing efforts, what is the first step to get started?
Wow, very good question actually, and something that very often is part of my meetings with brands that are they're looking at the opportunity, they don't know what the first step is. Our recommendation is typically to start to activate their community. Has nothing to do with Olapic. It has all to do with their ability to see for themselves the quality and quantity of content and engagement that they can generate by simply going out to their audiences, going out to their consumers and say, participate in a contest, take part, tell us how you're experiencing the brand, share how you wear, how you style this shirt, tell me how you're experiencing my service in travel, in accommodation, across the globe, and share with other consumers. And as they take this first step, they should realize the quality, as I said, and the quantity, and therefore probably the opportunity that is out there, just residing, with their community as it is today. Specifically, hashtag campaigns, contests, where as a first step is very effective actually to for brands to activate their community first by giving away something. Hey, be part of the brand experience. Share how you sport this pair of shoes, or how you experience traveling with I don't know, an airline across the globe. Tell us how you feel about it, and we'll reward you. So that's a very good way to take a first step into kind of understanding what the opportunity is.
Cool.
I hope that answers the question for
Well,
whoever asked. Thank you for the question. Good question.
Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna move on to the next one. So you've talked about gathering content. So how do you deal with the licensing? And I saw a couple of other questions that's similar as well about asking for permission to use the content. Is it common for customers to really want to participate?
That's a very good and very specific, very pragmatic question. I like it. It means that you were paying attention. So at Olapic, we, the center, the core of our solution is what we call the content engine. It's the core of our platform is about going out into the open web, into the social web, and collecting images that are related to brands, products, and services. Then, through our technology, not only we can collect, but we do a curation and moderation exercise that passes both by, through technology as a filtering mechanism with our algorithm that, analyze the data, dissect the images, and look at which are the images that are best suited for, to perform in the various marketing channels. And on the other hand, we have human moderation as well. So we have a team, a large team, a global team of moderators that actually looks through images and make sure that they are responding to the brand recommendation. After this filtering process and curation process, there's a fundamental passage that is about going back to the consumer who posted the picture and asking their permission on behalf of the brand to use the image on the marketing channels on website. It actually takes place typically in a very straightforward way, by typically on behalf of the brand, and therefore using the handle of the brand, asking the consumer, hey, we love your picture. Can we use it? Can we feature your picture in our next advertising, on our website, on our campaigns? And it's through this passage that we have the opportunity not only to engage positively with the community, but also to reassure them by the use of terms and conditions that we are referencing in the unlocking of the rights, assuring compliance, and we do a lot of auditing behind the scene to make sure that we have governance throughout the whole process. And ultimately, we ask for their permission, and they need to give us permission so that we can continue the rest of the process of making the images available to the brands. You asked about, I think specifically, what is the response rate? What is the expected, response? And I have to say, it's been overwhelmingly positive. When brands engage with consumers, we see in this particular, rights management and licensing passage, we see from 70 to 80% positive response without any incentive from consumers to let brands use their images. The typical answer is not only a yes, but it's a yes with three exclamation marks, where consumers that in the first place are calling out a brand, they're hashtagging a brand that is part of their experience, their daily life, they're responding to the brand when the brand goes into their feed and says, hey, we really like your image, can we use it? And as I said, 70 to 80% of them respond positively. At that point, the image is licensed, the brand has the permission from the user to feature the image, giving credit back to the user. So that's a very important passage. Straight recommendation from us for best practices is to always credit back and link back to the real person that is behind the user-generated content, so that it kind of confirms the authenticity and gives back from an exposure perspective to the person that in the first place shared the image.
Yeah, Luca, just to piggyback, another question just came in. Is permissions asked through email, and how do you ask them?
A very good point. So when looking at the social web specifically, the majority of the images that we find on behalf of brands are either in Instagram or in Twitter. So the way we would ask permission in those platforms is, through the connection that we have. We have, partnerships with Facebook and Instagram. We have partnership with Twitter and many other social networks. Through an API integration, through a technology integration, we are able to ask in the feed, so in the comments, in the case of Instagram, or in a reply in the case of Twitter, we can ask for permission there and then using the handle of the brand. So imagine @brand commenting on your image on Instagram, saying, we really love your brand, your image. Can we use it? Can we feature it in our campaign? Read the terms and conditions here. Respond #yes brand if you're giving your permission. So it's as simple as that. There's a number, as I said, of passages that we do behind the scene to assure compliance and governance throughout the whole process, and everything is auditable. It's we have developed quite a solid way of reassuring the best companies in the world in this interaction with their consumer, making sure it's within the safe, within a very safe environment, and long-lasting trust relationship are kept with their consumers.
Cool. There's 5 more minutes. I think
Yes.
I've chosen 2 of the most popular questions. We've got a lot more coming in, but from what I see here, the 2 most popular, I'll start with the second last one. Everyone's favorite, ROI. So you mentioned distribution strategies, but what about measurement? Is it possible to track the performance of UGC specifically?
Very, very good question for a very, pragmatic buyer of technology. The ROI question is very much, front and center for all the conversations that we have with all our customers. The way we provide ROI measurement is through, deep analytics that, spans across all channels where content is distributed. So, from a pragmatic perspective, every digital touch point that happen through an interaction with an image that comes from our platform is recorded in our platform and can be connected to a subsequent user journey that sees them either react to a marketing advertising message. So measuring the effectiveness, in click-through or in, what happens subsequently in adoption, therefore in acquisition. If we're talking about, website, it's much more straightforward interaction with an image and what happens when people interact, after people interact with user-generated images. Do they act? How are they likely to buy? Are they more likely to, take an action that is typically, buying? So there's a transactional element. We connect all these dots and we bring them all into our analytics platform, and we're therefore able to assign a specific ROI to each individual interaction, dissect them by channel, by marketing channel, and therefore providing the full picture of how user-generated content is effective in accordance to the KPI that needs to be measured.
Perfect. Well, if you can hear me typing, it's because I'm trying to save everyone's questions so that if we don't get to it in the next 2 minutes, we're going to put it together in an FAQ sheet. So,
Fantastic.
very last question. Lately, what has been one of your favorite examples of a client who has activated more than one of these trends that you've just shared?
So very, very good question. We have many that I can think of. One, kind of a classic, I believe, a worldwide phenomenon that started very early, believing in user-generated content, believing in the power and the empowering of their community, is NYX. NYX. NYX is a L'Oreal brand that has proven time and time again that activating community and relying on the community and relating to the community for their marketing and in all of their activities is effective. They make use of user-generated content both online and offline. It's extensively used to portray the use of their product on their website. It spans throughout all the channels. They use it on retargeting. They use it in email marketing, they use it on their catalogs, and ultimately they use it as the core of the experience, the digitalization of the experience in store. The integration of user-generated content for NYX in their store is amazing, is overwhelming. There are a few case studies that we can share with anyone who is interested. Maybe this very person that asked the question, we can share. There are videos about what NYX is doing to innovate through user-generated content, bringing to life their community, relating to their community for their marketing channel. Does this answer the last question? I think we're bang on 5 o'clock at the moment. I might have lost you, June, so I'm gonna actually say my thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming today online, listening to this webinar. Again, I am Luca Benini. We are open for business. Get in touch with me. Get in touch with the team. Remember, key takeaway from today: UGC works. 2017 is the year to activate communities, to harvest the value of the community, and to use it on every channel because it works. Again, thank you very much. I hope to see you soon. I hope to hear from you soon. Get in touch with us. We're open for business. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Luca. Bye.
Bye-bye.